Chapter 1090. Come, I'll let you do it. Jingyu looked at the Lion King in front of her, and a deep smile appeared in her eyes. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she said, I would like to see what abilities you have. Roar! The Lion King was the king of the lions. Since when had he been looked down upon? It immediately became angry. Its roar was loud and clear, and it bit towards Jingyu ferociously. The sharp fangs made Jingyu widen her eyes slightly, and she jumped to the side of the plane. Its agile body dodged left and right, and from time to time, it would jump onto a lion's body and jump left and right as if it was playing. It watched as the lions rolled on the ground in order to catch it, stirring up a mess in the quiet plains. Jingyu repeated the same trick and jumped on the Lion King's back. Her speed was amazing. Qinbai squatted on the hill and watched as the Lion King was flipped to the ground by Jingyu time and time again. Jingyu released him again and again before he was flipped over again. Jingyu seemed to be more than tired. The Lion King was also very persistent. Finally, after Qinbai lost count of how many times Jingyu pressed the Lion King to the ground, the surrounding lions stopped moving. They looked at each other and turned to look at Jingyu. How is it? Are you convinced now? There was a faint smile in Jingyu's eyes. She was panting slightly as she pressed down on the Lion King who had fallen to the ground and asked with a faint smile. For? The Lion King let out a weak roar and finally relaxed its body in an incomparably weak state. You should have said so earlier. If you had said so earlier, why did you have to suffer so much? Jingyu rolled her eyes helplessly as a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She slowly released her hand and watched the Lion King shake off the weeds on his body before standing up. Sigh. I'm so tired. Jingyu sighed deeply and swung her sore arms. She watched as the Lion King stood up and blinked his golden eyes at her. His face was full of grievance. It seemed to be accusing Jingyu of making it lose face in front of the pride. How was it going to survive in the future? Don't worry, don't worry. Jingyu calmly patted the Lion King's head and said, I won't blame you if you lose to me. If they don't accept it, they can challenge you again. The Lion King became even more resentful when he heard Jingyu's words. Come, let me go up. Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile as she looked sideways at the Lion King. Jingyu's words made the Lion King very unhappy and he snorted a few times. However, when he saw Jingyu's golden eyes, he seemed to be afraid of something. He had just been thrown down so many times. It was really painful, okay? The Lion King hesitated for a moment before he silently knelt down and lowered his head towards Jingyu. Jingyu looked at the Lion King's actions and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She turned around and climbed onto the Lion King's back. Only then did the Lion King stand up. Jingyu, who was originally fierce to the Lion King, saw Jingyu sitting on the Lion King's back and immediately scattered to the side. They watched as Jingyu walked forward steadily. Wherever Jingyu and the Lion King went, all the lions avoided them. The heads of the lions slowly drooped down. The golden light in Jingyu's eyes became even brighter. Her eyes flickered with a faint coldness. Chapter 1091. Qinbai had never seen such a soul-stirring scene. The woman sitting on the Lion King was dressed in tight black clothes and had a pair of golden eyes that were identical to the lion's. The figure sitting on the Lion King was like a king patrolling the mortal world. At this moment, Jingyu's radiance was unstoppable. Jingyu closed her eyes slightly and clearly felt the pride of lions on the plains entering her senses. This feeling was extremely familiar to Jingyu. After quietly closing her eyes for a moment, Jingyu slowly opened them. Her eyes were filled with joy as though she was a king who had won a victory. Jingyu suddenly shouted, Charge! The originally quiet pride of lions seemed to have received Jingyu's order. At this moment, all the lions madly rushed in the direction of Qinbai. Their eyes were filled with ferocity. Qinbai looked at the pride of lions that were rushing over with astonishment in his eyes. For a moment he stood on the spot, not knowing whether to hide or not. Qinbai frowned slightly as he looked at Jingyu's incomparably calm gaze. He didn't have any other thoughts. For some reason, Qinbai suddenly trusted Jingyu very much. Jingyu would never let anything happen to him. Thinking about that, Qin Bai quietly stood in the distance. He did not move. He looked at the lions rushing toward him, and he did not look like he was going to dodge. Jing Yu looked at Qin Bai's face. Her eyes did not look like she was going to dodge. When the pride of lions arrived in front of Qin Bai, it was as though they couldn't see Qin Bai. They whistled past Qin Bai like the wind without stopping at all. Haha. Jing Yu's joyful laughter sounded in his ears. It sounded on the plains like the wind blowing past. Qin Bai slowly turned around and looked in the direction of Jing Yu. Seeing Jing Yu sitting on the Lion King and galloping on the plains with a large group of lions following behind her, this scene was deeply imprinted in Qin Bai's heart. Those pitch-black eyes stared at Jing Yu's figure and a different expression flashed in his eyes. It was so deep and silent. Qin Bai. Jing Yu rode the Lion King and stopped in front of Qin Bai. She flipped over and got off the Lion King's back. Her golden eyes curved slightly and a beautiful smile appeared on her face. She blinked at Qin Bai and said, "Did you see that? I did it. Congratulations." Qin Bai looked at Jing Yu's joyful appearance and a faint smile appeared on his face. He looked at Jing Yu and said, "You surprised me." "Ha. There's more to come." Jing Yu proudly raised her head and patted the Lion King's head. She said, "You guys wait here and wait for me to come find you." Roar. The Lion King seemed to be very unhappy and roared. Jing Yu glared at the Lion King and said, "What's wrong? Haven't you been beaten enough?" Woo. The Lion King looked at Jing Yu's frightening expression and silently lowered its head. Jing Yu looked at the Lion King's appearance and happily patted its head. She said, "That's right. Don't worry, I won't treat you badly if you follow me." Qin Bai stood to the side and looked at Jing Yu, who seemed to be very happy with the Lion King. Although he didn't know how Jing Yu communicated with the Lion King, he inexplicably felt the Lion King's human emotions when he saw Jing Yu's appearance. It was so clear. Chapter 1092. Let's go. Jing Yu finally retracted her hand and watched the Lion King lead the pride down the hill. After returning to their original position, Jing Yu turned to look at Qin Bai. Qin Bai raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded in agreement. Jing Yu walked in front. When Qin Bai turned around, he squinted his eyes and glanced sideways at the pride of lions at the bottom of the hill. He quickened his pace and stood beside Jing Yu. He asked curiously, "How did you do it?" When Jing Yu heard Qin Bai's question, she blinked her eyes and said in a conflicted tone, "I don't know how I did it, but I know. I can do it." When Qin Bai heard Jing Yu's answer, his eyes narrowed, but he didn't say anything. "Where are we going now?" Qin Bai and Jing Yu walked into the forest and returned to where they came from. Qin Bai narrowed his eyes and asked Jing Yu. "Let's go back," Jing Yu replied faintly and said, "I'm very tired now. I want to go back and rest." Jing Yu raised her hand to her mouth and blew a clear whistle. The two gray wolves, Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, who had fled into the forest, rushed back to Jing Yu's side. "Tired?" Qin Bai looked sideways at Jing Yu and asked, "What happened just now? Are you hurt?" Jing Yu shook her head helplessly and said, "I often feel this kind of tiredness. It's not physical tiredness but mental tiredness. It clearly tells me that I can't do anything else now. I need to rest." Oh. Qin Bai seemed to understand and responded. Looking at Jing Yu's appearance, she really didn't talk much. She was silent the whole way and allowed Silver Arrow and Silver Wind to lead the way. On the wide plains, after Jing Yu and Qin Bai left, light footsteps slowly sounded. A pair of black boots stepped on the muddy ground, and the corners of the black robe fluttered in a cold arc. The tall figure was dressed in ink-black clothes, and a pair of cold and dark eyes quietly looked at the pride of lions below. He closed his eyes slightly, as if he was reminiscing about something. Listening to the sound of the wind, it was as if he could hear the pleasant laughter echoing in his ears. There was a ripple in the air, and a black shadow silently appeared behind the man. He bowed and knelt on the ground as he called out, "Master, everything is ready." A calm and cold voice sounded. Under the setting sun, there seemed to be a strong sense of longing, and also seemed to be filled with a deep murderous intent. At the bottom of the hill, almost all the lions stood up. pairs of golden eyes looked at the man, and there was a kind of fear in their eyes, as if they had seen their natural enemy. The man standing in the night breeze looked at the distant horizon with his pitch-black eyes. He calmly and deeply said, "Soon." These words were like a trembling sigh that tugged at one's heartstrings. Jingyu and Qinbai went back and forth for a long time. When they returned to their residence, the sun was already setting in the west. After Jingyu returned to her residence, she fell asleep. Qinggu was curious about what Jingyu had done, so he pulled Qinbai and asked. When he found out that Jingyu had gone to tame the pride of lions, he was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. Chapter 1093. Seeing Jingyu fall asleep, he frowned slightly. He didn't know what was wrong with her. Qinggu was worried about Jingyu, so he went into the room to check her pulse. However, Jingyu's pulse was stable. There was nothing wrong with her. She was really just asleep. "Qinggu, did Jingyu do this in the past?" Qinggu was sitting outside, changing the bandages on Qinbai's wounds. Qinbai was still thinking about the scene of Jingyu taming the lions. He frowned slightly and looked at Qinggu. "I'm not sure either." Qinggu changed the bandages on Qinbai's wounds as he said, "I heard Ninth Brother mention that when Jingyu first used her different pupils to tame the vicious sharks at the bottom of the sea, she fell into a coma. He asked me why, but I couldn't find anything wrong with her even after I checked countless times. After thinking about it, I felt that this might be a common occurrence when someone's different pupils were activated, so I didn't think much of it." Qinggu straightened up slightly. Qinbai pursed his lips when he heard Qingji's answer. "What's wrong? Why do you look like you're very interested in Ninth Sister's different pupils?" Qinggu asked as he stared at Qinbai strangely. "Of course." Qinbai smiled and looked at Qinggu with clear eyes. "I'm a member of the Holy Family. Searching for a girl with different pupils is the mission of the Holy Family. Now that I've seen her, I'm naturally curious. Please don't take offense." Qinggu smiled awkwardly and said, "I don't mean to discriminate against you. I was just casually asking." "It's okay." Qinbai didn't seem to care, but he really didn't say anything else. After Qinggu changed the bandages on Qinbai's wounds, he went to the back of the mountain to pick herbs. After entering the Roman forest, Qinggu was probably the happiest person besides Jingyu. The mountain full of herbs made Qinggu very happy. Every day, when he was free, he would bring his guards into the mountain to pick herbs. The sky gradually darkened. After sitting outside for a while, Qinbai walked into Jingyu's room. When he stepped into the room, he saw Jingyu sleeping soundly on the bed. Her eyes were tightly closed, and she was quiet. There was a slight change in Qinbai's eyes. He slowly walked to Jingyu's bedside and sat down. His eyes wandered over Jingyu's face and finally landed on Jingyu's tightly closed eyes. He suddenly thought of the scene he saw on the plains today. The woman sitting on the Lion King's back and laughing. The woman with a pair of golden eyes that shone with a dazzling light. Jingyu? Qinbai's eyes deepened. His gaze moved to Jingyu's finger. The imprint on her middle finger was very clear. Qinbai's eyes narrowed slightly. He raised his hand to hold Jingyu's hand and gently stroked the imprint on her middle finger. Life and death together. Qinbai's voice had an inexplicable meaning. There was a slight change in his expression as he quietly watched Jingyu. Oh! Jingyu was in a deep sleep. She seemed to be dreaming of something. She turned over and moved her body. She frowned slightly and withdrew her hand from Qinbai's grasp. Qinbai's body stiffened slightly. He stared at Jingyu's movements and pursed his lips slightly. Xiaochen. Jingyu's lips moved slightly as she called out a name. Qinbai's expression suddenly turned cold. Qinbai's eyes changed slightly. His thin lips pursed slightly. He stared at Jingyu for a long while before he slowly stood up. He looked down at Jingyu with a pair of cold eyes. Chapter 1094. His aura was so extraordinary that it was different from the usual Qinbai. The first ray of sunlight in the morning shone on Jingyu's face. Jingyu frowned slightly and opened her misty eyes to look around. She seemed to have slept for a long time and finally woke up. She sat up and rubbed her neck. I slept for a long time. Jingyu rubbed her neck, stood up, and walked out of the house. It was already lively outside the house. Qin Bai and Qin Gu were sitting outside and seemed to be talking about something. When they heard something behind them, they turned their heads and saw Jingyu, who had just woken up. "Ninth sister, you're finally awake." Qin Gu saw that Jingyu was still sleepy. He shook his head helplessly and said, "Why are you getting more and more sleepy?" "I don't know." Jingyu sat down beside Qin Gu. She raised her hand and took a sip of spring water from the bamboo jar. Only then did she feel much better. She let out a deep sigh and said, "I finally feel much better." Could it be that he's sick? Qin Gu looked at Jingyu in confusion. He felt Jingyu's pulse again, but the diagnosis was still the same. It's really strange." Qin Gu stared at Jingyu and said, "She's very healthy, okay? Jingyu shook off Qin Ji's hand and said, "I'm just tired and slept for a while. What can happen?" "Okay." Qin Gu couldn't explain why Jingyu was like this. He helplessly lowered his head and agreed. After the three of them sat together and talked for a while, Jingyu was about to go out again. Qin Bai naturally asked to go with her. This time, Jingyu took Qin Bai in a different direction. The place they were going to was not a plain, but a forest. Qin Bai had the experience of the last time. This time, he was almost patient and followed Jingyu to a forest. "We're here." At this time, Jingyu and Qin Bai were sitting outside a forest. They stuck their heads out slightly and looked straight ahead. A group of tigers. Qin Bai looked over and saw a group of tigers with patterns all over their bodies. Each of them was safely nested in the forest. His eyes widened slightly and he looked sideways at Jingyu, who was eager to try. "Wait for me here. When I tell you to run, run down the mountain diagonally." Jingyu looked sideways at Qin Bai and said, "After running for a distance, climb up a tree and don't move." Qin Bai frowned slightly. He thought about what happened yesterday and frowned slightly, but he agreed. Once again, he saw Jingyu put on a battle between a human and a tiger. However, today, Jingyu was obviously not in the right state. It was not as smooth as yesterday. Oh my God! Jingyu did not manage to tame the tigers today. Instead, she angered them. Qin Bai looked on helplessly as Jingyu was chased up and down by the group of tigers. She was almost out of strength. Finally, she could not stand it anymore and rushed towards Qin Bai. "Run!" Jingyu shouted. Qin Bai had already reacted. He immediately turned and ran. The two of them ran down the hill as if their lives depended on it. The tigers chased after Jingyu. Jingyu and Qin Bai quickly rushed to the bottom of the hill. Then they climbed up a tree and stopped moving. Chapter 1095. They watched as the tiger whizzed past them. Then, as if it had lost its target, or as if it didn't want to chase after it, it returned. That was close. Qin Bai and Jingyu were hiding in the leaves of the tree. The two of them were so close that Jingyu was so focused on the movements below that she didn't notice the distance between the two of them. "Yeah," Qin Bai replied faintly. His arm held onto the branch to prevent the two of them from falling. "Let's stay up here for a while." Jingyu took a deep breath and said, "These tigers are very sneaky." Qin Bai replied again. Just as Qin Bai replied, they saw with their own eyes that the tiger, which had originally left, came back again. Jingyu and Qin Bai were so shocked that their bodies stiffened and they didn't move. The two of them stayed on the tree for a long time. They clearly saw that the tiger had circled around the area. Then, of all things, it lay down under the tree that Jingyu and Qin Bai were in. The moment she saw the tiger lying down leisurely, Jingyu felt as if 10,000 alpacas were galloping through her heart. There was only one thought in her mind. If she managed to tame this tiger, then the first thing she would do was to fucking beat it up. Because the tiger was below them, Qin Bai and Jingyu didn't dare to move at all. They could only sit stiffly on the tree trunk. They could hear each other's breathing and their respective heartbeats. It was so strong. The two of them were so close that Jingyu frowned slightly. She turned her head to look at Qin Bai. She seemed to have sensed that the two of them were too close and was trying to increase the distance between them. "Don't move." Qin Bai seemed to have sensed Jingyu's movement and said with a slight frown. Jingyu's body stiffened. She lowered her head slightly and saw that the tiger, which had originally been lying down quietly, seemed to have sensed some movement. It raised its head slightly. Jingyu immediately lowered her breathing. The surroundings were silent. Jingyu and Qinbai were frozen and didn't move at all. After pausing for a long time, they saw the tiger move its body. It moved outside. Jingyu and Qinbai had been frozen for a long time. Now they dared to move. Jingyu's legs were numb from squatting for so long. Hiss. Jingyu slowly stood up. She held onto the tree trunk and turned her head to look at Qinbai. If Qinbai hadn't held onto the tree trunk from behind, Jingyu wouldn't have lost so much strength. Thank you. Jingyu turned her head to look at Qinbai. She didn't expect that Qinbai would be so close to her. Jingyu was so shocked that she hurriedly retreated. However, the two of them were standing on the tree trunk. If she retreated, they would fall. Be careful. Qinbai looked at Jingyu's falling body. His eyes trembled slightly. He raised his hand and grabbed onto Jingyu's waist. Jingyu was awakened by Qinbai's warning, but it was too late. The two of them fell straight down. Qinbai raised his hand and grabbed onto the tree trunk. However, because he was too slow, his hand slipped and he fell down with Jingyu in his arms. The two of them rolled down the hill and into the grass forest. Aya! Jingyu was protected in Qinbai's arms. His hand was behind Jingyu's head. The two of them rolled for a distance before stopping. Chapter 1096. Jingyu felt dizzy. She looked at Qinbai, who was on top of her. His hands were behind her head, and he was hugging her waist tightly. In that instant, Jingyu's vision suddenly blurred. For a moment, she actually thought that the person hugging her was Xiao Chen. How familiar was this scene? Back in the Imperial City, when she was admiring the wild chrysanthemums on the hill, Xiao Chen had protected her as they rolled down the hill. Xiao Chen. Jingyu's eyes lit up as she softly called out his name. Qinbai's body suddenly stiffened, and he slowly lifted his head from Jingyu's body. Qinbai quietly looked at Jingyu in the middle of the grassy forest. His pitch-black eyes were filled with an unknown emotion. It seemed like anger, unwillingness, and a fierce aura that Jingyu couldn't understand. Jingyu. Qinbai called out softly. When Jingyu heard Qinbai's call, she seemed to have realized something. Her eyes widened as she looked at Qinbai, who was still on top of her. She suddenly raised her hand and pushed Qinbai away. Hiss. When Jingyu pushed him so hard, Qinbai's wound was pulled. He frowned slightly and sucked in a breath of cold air. I'm sorry. When Jingyu saw Qinbai's reaction, her expression changed slightly. She pursed her lips and said a few words before turning around and running away. Jingyu ran straight ahead for a long distance. Qinbai could only watch as Jingyu ran far away. Jingyu, who was sitting on a rock on the hill, quietly enjoyed the breeze. She raised her hand to cover her heart. She had never felt so uncomfortable before. It wasn't Xiao Chen was already dead. Jingyu slowly closed her eyes and buried her head in them. She didn't say a word. Qinbai covered his wound and walked for a long time before he saw Jingyu sitting on a rock. A deep look appeared in his eyes, and he clenched his fists slightly. Jingyu lowered her head and buried her face in her arms. She sat there quietly without moving at all. Jingyu. Qinbai's voice rang in Jingyu's ears. He slowly placed his hand on Jingyu's shoulder. Jingyu trembled and looked up at Qinbai. Under the sunlight, Jingyu. I'm fine. Jingyu slowly lowered her head and didn't say a word. Qinbai stood beside Jingyu and didn't say a word. He was like a silent guardian. Jingyu didn't know if it was an illusion, but after Qinbai stood there, Jingyu suddenly felt relaxed. Jingyu slowly suppressed the pain in her heart. She took a deep breath and slowly stood up. Qinbai, thank you, Jingyu said to Qinbai, her eyes full of gratitude. Okay. Qinbai responded and looked up at Jingyu. He took a step back and extended his hand to Jingyu. Jingyu looked at Qinbai's outstretched hand and was slightly stunned. She tilted her head and said, "Let's go." With that, Jingyu turned and jumped off the rock. Once again she ran into the grass forest. Qinbai looked at Jingyu's actions and slowly withdrew his outstretched hand. His expression didn't change, but his hands were clenched tightly. Chapter 1097. Jing Yu tried again and again. Qin Bai stood in the distance and watched as Jing Yu worked tirelessly to conquer the Tiger King. He clearly saw Jing Yu's arm get scratched by the Tiger King's sharp claws. At that moment, the trembling that came from his heart was so clear. A clear feeling called anger spread through Qin Bai's heart. Jing Yu couldn't see the stones in his hand and quickly threw them out. He saw Jing Yu finally smile and strut around on the Tiger King's back. "Ha! I did it!" Jing Yu cheered happily. Her figure leaping through the forest on the Tiger King and her smile under the setting sun unconsciously attracted Qin Bai's heart. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. When Jing Yu and Qin Bai returned, the sky was already completely dark. The autumn weather made the night a little chilly. Jing Yu pursed her lips slightly and looked at the pitch-black sky. The two gray wolves beside her, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, had a pair of emerald eyes that were especially dazzling in the dark night. "Jing Yu." Qin Bai followed beside Jing Yu and looked at Jing Yu's lit torch. He tilted his head slightly and called out to her. Jing Yu tilted her head and looked at Qin Bai with some confusion in her eyes. "Nothing." Qin Bai looked at Jing Yu's gaze and shook his head slightly. He looked ahead and asked, "How much longer until we reach our destination?" "Let me see." Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at the pitch-black forest around them. She frowned. Her black eyes had already turned emerald and were very similar to the eyes of the two gray wolves beside her. Qin Bai saw the change in Jing Yu's eyes and his heart skipped a beat. "There's still some distance left. We've been tired all day. Let's take a rest before continuing." Jing Yu took a deep breath and said, "There's a river in front. We can rest for a while." Qin Bai nodded slightly when he heard Jing Yu's words. The two of them started a fire by the river and sat on a rock. They squinted and looked at the surface of the water in the distance. The grilled fish on the fire emitted a faint fragrance. Jing Yu handed the grilled fish to Qin Bai. Qin Bai took it and thanked her. It was quiet all around. Only the sound of the fire could be heard. Qin Bai looked up at Jing Yu. "Jing Yu, what do you want to do in the future?" Jing Yu was a little stunned when she heard Qin Bai's question. She blinked and looked at Qin Bai, not knowing what he meant. "Nothing. I just want to know what you want to do after you get your revenge." Qin Bai looked up at Jing Yu and asked. Jing Yu fell silent when she heard Qin Bai's question. She lowered the food in her hand and didn't say anything. Xiao Chen said that after the war ended and they got their revenge, they would travel the world. They would go to all the places they wanted to go. They would never be separated again and they would have no more worries. However, Jing Yu was stunned when she heard Qin Bai's question. In the future without Xiao Chen, I don't know." Jing Yu stood up slowly. The bitterness in her mouth was unbearable. "Jing Yu." Qin Bai looked at Jing Yu, who stood up, and suddenly grabbed Jing Yu's wrist. His warm palm held Jing Yu's hand urgently. Jing Yu turned to look at Qin Bai. "Come with me." In the dark night, Qin Bai's gaze was so serious that it surprised Jing Yu for a moment. She looked at Qin Bai's serious expression and a strange feeling arose in her heart. Chapter 1098. I meant what I said. Qin Bai stared at Jing Yu and said, "I want to take care of you." As soon as Qin Bai said this, Jing Yu looked at Qin Bai in disbelief. "If possible, I want to take care of you for the rest of my life." Qin Bai spoke again. It was a very affectionate confession, but Jing Yu did not know why. Her heart flashed with an emotion that was very resistant to it. On the other side of that emotion, there was also an incomparable feeling of gratitude, which made Jing Yu's mood fall into a very strange state. "Jing Yu, I'm serious." Qin Bai slowly approached Jing Yu. Jing Yu could clearly smell his unique scent. It was so strange that Jing Yu took a step back and shook off Qin Bai's hand. "Qin Bai, are you pitying me?" Jing Yu clenched her fists and stared at Qin Bai. "I don't care." "Jing Yu." Qin Bai looked at Jing Yu as she turned to leave. He suddenly took a step forward and hugged Jing Yu. "Are you crazy?" Jing Yu probably didn't expect Qin Bai to hug her so frivolously. She raised her elbow and hit Qin Bai in the stomach. Qin Bai let go of her in pain and pulled on his wound. He watched as Jing Yu turned to leave. Qin Bai stood on the spot and panted slightly. He looked in the direction that Jing Yu had left. A fierce look appeared in his eyes. He clenched his fists and lowered his head slowly to hide the look in his eyes. Not long after Jing Yu left, the bonfire was extinguished and Qin Bai disappeared. In a place where Jing Yu couldn't see, a dark figure stood under the tree. His back was to the light, so she couldn't see his face. That person seemed to be standing there waiting for someone. His hands were subconsciously moving behind his back. A soft sound was heard. The standing figure tilted his head slightly and looked to the side. A figure slowly appeared behind the tree. That slender figure was obviously a woman. She was wearing black night clothes. "My lord." A familiar voice rang out. The figure heard the call behind him and slowly turned his head around. His face was revealed. On a cold and handsome face, there was a pair of calm black eyes. "Lingji, why are you here this time?" The person standing under the tree was none other than Qin Bai, who had just separated from Jing Yu. He was dressed in black and had nothing else on him. He just stood there quietly, but his body was surrounded by an incomparably strong aura of nobility. Third Elder asked Lingji to ask my lord what we should do. Lingji bowed slightly in front of Qin Bai and replied. When Qin Bai heard Lingji's question, he frowned and faintly showed his displeasure. His eyes became colder and colder. He stared at Lingji and said, "Didn't I say that I would contact you if there was a plan?" "My lord, please calm down." Lingji saw the change in Qin Bai's expression and her heart trembled violently. She suddenly knelt in front of Qin Bai and said, "Third Elder is also thinking about your safety. If your identity is exposed, the consequences, I know what I'm doing." Qin Bai turned his head indifferently and took a deep breath. He said, "Let the people of the Holy Family prepare. There will be a big battle soon." Chapter 1099. Yes. Lingji respectfully bowed her head and replied to Qin Bai. Also, Qin Bai dragged his voice and said indifferently, "After the incident that day, how did Xiao Chen deal with it?" "Sir, don't worry. Everything is going according to plan." Lingji solemnly replied when she heard Qin Bai's words. "That's good." Qin Bai indifferently turned his head and said, "Jing Yu intends to control 10,000 beasts and form an alliance with the soldiers. Lions, tigers, jackals, and wolves, you should prepare to deal with it." Lingji bowed her head and said, "Then sir, when will you leave?" "That's not something you should ask." Qin Bai indifferently replied and suddenly turned to leave. Lingji suddenly stood up and tightly gripped the sword in her hand. She took a deep breath and said, "Third Elder asked me to tell sir. The woman with different pupils is an evil person. I hope that sir can understand and not make the act real." Lingji stared at Qin Bai's back and said. Qin Bai heard Lingji's words and his body stiffened for a moment. Then, as if he didn't react at all, he walked straight ahead and said, "I know what I'm doing." Qin Bai's figure disappeared into the darkness, but the woman still stood in the same place. She took a deep breath and didn't say anything. She tightly gripped the sword in her hand and suddenly turned around. She leaped onto a tree branch and disappeared among the leaves. No one saw this scene and no one knew what the two of them were talking about. Jing Yu didn't return to her residence. Instead, she slept outside with the two gray wolves, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, and looked at the sky in a daze. On the grassy hillside, Jing Yu leaned on Yin Jian's back and looked up at the dark sky. There wasn't any fluctuation in her eyes. Yin Feng walked around and laid down beside Jing Yu. Its wide tail covered Jing Yu's body. "It's like we've returned to the past." Jing Yu patted Yin Feng's head and her eyes were dazed for a moment. At that time, they were still young and Yin Jian and Yin Feng weren't as big as they were now. Their life in the Roman forest was so interesting. They didn't have to worry about anything every day. Xiao Chen's intrusion. Not only did he intrude into her world, but he also intruded into her heart. But why did it come so suddenly? Just when she had finally accepted it with great difficulty, such a thing happened. It came so suddenly and it left, so suddenly. Jing Yu clutched her chest tightly and curled herself up. She closed her eyes and trembled slightly. Woo! A soft cry was heard. Yin Jian's head gently nudged Jingyu. Jingyu slowly opened her eyes and looked at Yin Feng with tears in her eyes. I miss him so much, so much. Jingyu bit her lips tightly. No matter how hard she tried to hold back her tears, they overflowed from her eyes and dripped onto Yin Jian's fur. At this moment, the atmosphere became incomparably heavy. Jingyu didn't know how she fell asleep. She only knew that she didn't sleep well in this incomparably cold night. When she was deep in sleep, she felt a pair of hands gently wiping away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Tell her, Jingyu, don't cry. A familiar smell, a familiar voice, a familiar temperature. Chapter 1100. Xiao Qin. Jingyu abruptly opened her eyes and sat up from the ground. However, she froze the moment she opened her eyes. The person who was squatting in front of her had his hands stretched out stiffly and was staring at Jingyu. It's you. Jingyu looked at Qin Bai, who was dressed in black. She lowered her head slightly and hid the anxious expression on her face. Yes. Qin Bai stood up slowly. Seeing that Jingyu had also stood up, he said, Yin Jian brought me here. Oh. Jingyu glanced at Yin Jian beside her and replied expressionlessly. Yesterday. I'm sorry. Qin Bai looked at Jingyu with a complicated expression. He pursed his lips and said, I was rude. I'm sorry. It's fine. Jingyu stood up and patted Yin Jian's head. It's time to go back. We haven't returned for a night. If we don't go back now, Qinggu will probably cause a commotion and come looking for us. Okay. Qin Bai looked at Jingyu's back and pursed his lips slightly. The two of them rode the gray wolf back to their residence. They immediately saw Qinggu standing at the door with an extremely anxious expression. Jingyu shook her head helplessly. This person was really a mother who worried about things. My little ancestor. Where did the two of you run off to? Jingyu and Qin Bai heard Qingji's words as they approached. Jingyu flipped over and looked at Qinggu. We were a little late. What's wrong? This young master didn't sleep the entire night. I was worried about the two of you. Qinggu said as if he had been wronged. He pointed at his eyes and said, Look at my eyes. It's all bruised. You were beaten up? Jingyu looked at Qinggu happily and said with a smile. What do you mean he was beaten up? Qinggu was quite indignant and wanted to say something, but Jingyu raised her hand and stopped him. Stop joking around. Let's get to work. What's wrong? Qinggu asked when he saw Jingyu's serious expression. Where's Li Weiming? When are you coming? Jingyu asked as she walked in. They should be here in about an hour. Qinggu nodded and followed Jingyu inside. He asked, What happened? Did the people outside come in? Jingyu replied calmly and said, You'll know later. When Li Weiming arrives, tell him to come see me. Also, where's Jin Hai? Qinggu heard Jingyu's question and was slightly surprised. He looked at Jingyu and asked, Do you mean Jin Hai who can make saddles? Jingyu nodded and walked into the room. She looked sideways at a soldier and said, Go find me some charcoal. The soldier answered and walked out quickly. Qinggu looked at Jingyu and widened his eyes slightly. He said, Ninth sister-in-law, are you going to train another group of people like the Black Qilin? Jingyu heard Qingji's question and smiled faintly. She said, Who said I was going to train another group? Eh? Qinggu stared at Jingyu, his eyes full of questions. What I want to do is to train all the soldiers into the 10,000 beast army. Jingyu's eyes shone brightly, and the look in her eyes made Qingji's eyes widen. Chapter 1101. For a moment, Qinggu thought that he was hallucinating. He stared at Jingyu in disbelief and asked, Aya, don't just stand there. Help me look after Li Weiming. Tell him to come see me when he's here. Jingyu didn't want to waste time talking to Qinggu. She waved Qinggu aside in disdain. Just as Qinggu was about to say something, the soldier had already brought charcoal over. Jingyu no longer bothered with Qinggu. She picked up charcoal from the side and began to draw on the paper. Qinggu stood outside the door with a blank expression. He didn't know what Jingyu wanted to do, but Jing Yu's words made Qin Ji's heart tremble. He quickly ran towards Qin Bai. Qin Bai. Qin Bai was playing with the bow in his hand when he heard Qin Ji's call. He turned around in confusion. Quick, quick, tell me, what did you do with Jing Yu last night? Qin Gu asked Qin Bai excitedly. I went to tame a tiger. Qin Bai was silent for a moment. He looked at Qin Gu calmly and replied. Qin Gu was stunned at first, then he jumped away in horror. He looked at Qin Bai silently and asked, Then, did you tame it? Or not? Of course, I tamed it, Qin Bai said under Qin Ji's serious gaze. Qin Gu couldn't stay calm for a long time. His brain was spinning rapidly as if he had thought of something terrible. He frowned and sat to the side. Qin Bai looked at Qin Ji's expression and raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't say anything and continued to play with the bow in his hand. His expression was very calm. A lion and a tiger? What is Jing Yu trying to do? Qin Ji's expression changed slightly for a moment. She's going to make the world fall into chaos. Qin Bai quietly added. Qin Ji's face darkened slightly. He looked at Qin Bai and sighed helplessly when he saw Qin Bai playing with the bow. Jing Yu locked herself in the room after coming back. She was lying on the table and drawing. No one knew what she was doing. Qin Gu was in the courtyard playing with the herbs he picked. Just as Qin Gu said, Li Weiming appeared with a small group of people after about an hour. Boss, you were looking for me? Li Weiming's skin was even more firm than when they first met. He walked in with an imposing manner and stood in front of Jing Yu. You're here? Jing Yu heard Li Weiming's voice. She frowned slightly and raised her head to ask, Where is Jin Hai now? Jin Hai. He's with General Shangguan now. Li Weiming paused for a moment before replying. Okay, bring your people and come with me. Jing Yu nodded slightly and picked up the scattered papers on the table. Let's go. Boss, is there a mission? Li Weiming looked at Jing Yu's expression and was slightly stunned. He then looked at Jing Yu excitedly and asked. Jing Yu's lips curled into a faint smile. You'll know once you follow me. I. Jing Yu led Li Weiming and his group in the direction of Shangguan Hongwen. Li Weiming led a group of people on Black Qilin while Jing Yu rode on Silver Arrow. Their speed was not inferior at all. Chapter 1102. The group moved very quickly and arrived at the place where Shangguan Hongwen's troops were. They were still in the middle of training when Jing Yu arrived. Everyone stopped what they were doing when Jing Yu arrived. Jing Yu looked around. It was no different from where she lived. Jing Yu raised her eyebrows and nodded at everyone. Then, she walked into Shangguan Hongwen's room. 9th Imperial Concubine. Shangguan Hongwen saw Jing Yu and nodded at Jing Yu. General Shangguan. Jing Yu nodded. Then she sat down on a chair and said to Shangguan Hongwen, I came here today because I have something to tell General Shangguan. It's very important. Please don't be surprised if you hear it. Shangguan Hongwen was still curious about Jing Yu's sudden arrival. When he heard Jing Yu's words, he suddenly thought of something and his eyes widened in surprise. I want to train General Shangguan's soldiers into a force similar to the Mahist cavalry. Jing Yu stared at Shangguan Hongwen and said. Shangguan Hongwen's heart skipped a beat when he heard Jing Yu's words. His eyes widened slightly, and he pursed his lips as he looked at Jing Yu in astonishment. What do you need me to do? After a moment of silence, he seemed to be laughing at Jing Yu's words. He took a deep breath and looked at Jing Yu. General Shangguan doesn't need to do anything. Jing Yu smiled. She looked at Shangguan Hongwen and said, You just need to gather the soldiers. Leave the rest to me. Shangguan Hongwen nodded slowly. He looked at Jing Yu and calmed down. Shangguan Hongwen's army gathered together. The soldiers didn't know what was going on. They looked at Jing Yu and Shangguan Hongwen in confusion, waiting for them to speak. The enemy is right in front of us. I hope you can understand that your lives are being exchanged by your comrades. Jing Yu looked at everyone calmly and said, And now, the first thing you need to do is to fight. I don't want you to rush in. I want you to learn how to defeat the enemy. Jing Yu looked at everyone and said, Or rather, it's not about defeating the enemy, but how to defeat yourself. Go and defeat yourself. Jing Yu's voice wasn't loud, but it was heard by everyone. Before anyone could digest what Jing Yu meant, she led everyone into the depths of the forest without saying a word. Everyone was puzzled along the way. Not to mention the soldiers, even Li Weiming, who was at the side, was at a loss. "Commander Li, where is the 9th Imperial concubine taking us?" The soldier at the side couldn't suppress the doubt in his heart and asked Li Weiming with a tilt of his head. "I don't know." When Li Weiming heard this person's question, he frowned and said with a conflicted expression. Everyone was even more confused when they heard this. They blinked slightly and continued to walk forward. Jing Yu was not in a hurry at all and did not say much. She just let everyone follow her all the way and kept walking forward. Chapter 1103. We're almost there. When Jing Yu saw Shangguan Hongwen coming over, she seemed to want to ask something, but before Shangguan Hongwen could speak, Jing Yu had already spoken first. After Shangguan Hongwen heard this, he silently swallowed the words in his mouth. "There's no hurry." Jing Yu turned her head again and smiled at Shangguan Hongwen. "Yes, there's no hurry." Shangguan Hongwen laughed dryly and didn't say anything else. From where Shangguan Hongwen lived, they walked out of the forest. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the plains. Jing Yu and the soldiers stood at the edge of the forest. At a glance, they could see the vast plains. "I didn't expect there to be such a large plain in the Roman forest." Shangguan Hongwen's eyes flashed with surprise as he turned his head to look at Jing Yu. "There are many things you didn't expect." Jing Yu walked towards the plain. Everyone followed behind her and walked towards the plain. They looked at the plain and looked around. "But why did the 9th Imperial concubine bring us here?" Shangguan Hongwen looked around for a long time but didn't see anything on the plains. He turned his head and asked Jing Yu curiously. "Of course I have my reasons." The corners of Jing Yu's mouth curled up slightly. She looked at the crowd and said slowly, "What you need to know next is the reason why I came here. Everything is just the beginning." When Jing Yu finished speaking, everyone turned their heads in confusion. They looked at the people beside them and exchanged glances with each other. Their eyes were filled with confusion. "Come out," Jing Yu said indifferently as she turned around and looked at the empty plains behind her. "What's that?" "I don't know." Everyone heard Jing Yu's shout and their eyes were filled with confusion. They looked behind Jing Yu. Under everyone's gaze, a lion with glossy fur slowly walked out from behind Jing Yu with steady steps. Lion. The moment the lion appeared, the soldiers in front of Jing Yu immediately drew their swords. Jing Yu looked at their actions and raised her eyebrows slightly without saying anything. Li Weiming was also shocked by the sudden appearance of the lion. However, when he saw Jing Yu's expressionless face, he silently suppressed the shock in his heart. He guessed that this was a pet that boss had subdued again. However, just as Li Weiming thought of this, he suddenly saw another lion's head appear behind the lion. After the first one appeared, the second one appeared. More and more heads appeared. Everyone was stunned by the appearance of the lions. A group of lions appeared in front of everyone and stood behind Jing. Everyone stared at Jing Yu and swallowed their saliva. "Good fellow." Jing Yu looked at everyone's expressions and then calmly turned her head to look at the Lion King standing at the head of the group of lions. She reached out to touch the Lion King's head. The soldiers standing behind Jing Yu all held their swords in their hands and trembled. "Do you see this? This is my gift to all of you." Jing Yu had a faint smile in her eyes as she raised her hand to touch the Lion King's head. She looked up at the group of lions and said, "Since we can have Mahis cavalry, why can't we have a group of lion cavalry as well?" Chapter 1104. The 9th Imperial concubine, what are you? Shangguan Hongwen was also shocked by Jing Yu's words. He looked at Jing Yu fearfully. Jing Yu smiled faintly and said, "As you can see, what I want to do is to create a strong beast army." The moment Jing Yu finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. Jing Yu looked at everyone quietly and said, "Put down your weapons and come over to choose your mounts." When everyone heard Jing Yu's words, they all looked at each other, but no one moved. "Don't be afraid, they won't hurt you," Jing Yu said as she patted the Lion King's head. Everyone watched as the huge lion knelt down. Jingyu jumped onto the Lion King's back and slowly stood up. There was no change in the expression of the woman sitting on the Lion King. Her originally pitch-black eyes turned into a resplendent golden color. She looked around at everyone and said indifferently, "Believe in these lions. They will be your companions on the battlefield. Do you see the Mahist cavalry? What you need to do is to be like them." When Jingyu finished speaking, the Mahist cavalry, who were originally standing at the side, heard Jingyu's words and all of them subconsciously puffed out their chests and stood up straight. Receiving the baptism of everyone's gazes, they felt a sense of pride from the bottom of their hearts. "I believe in the 9th Imperial Concubine." One of them took a deep breath and walked towards the lions in front of him. When he walked in front of one of the lions, the lion let out a low roar, scaring the soldiers so much that he almost knelt down. When the Mahist cavalry saw the soldiers' reaction, they almost laughed out loud. They inexplicably thought of themselves. It hadn't been that long, but how did it become a memory? Li Weiming looked at the ink qilin under him and patted its head. The ink qilin hummed twice and looked very intimate. The scene of them taming the ink qilin was still vivid in their minds. Now, they had become brothers who would go through life and death with the ink qilin. That afternoon was a historical change. Jingyue had created an army of beasts that were so powerful that it was terrifying. They had quietly risen in the Roman forest. 5 places, 5 armies. The wolf and tiger divisions were the main army, the Mahist cavalry and lion cavalry were the flanks, and the last assault team was made up of cheetahs. Jingyu and the 5 captains of the Mahist cavalry started the beast army training in the plains. Everything was going according to Jingyu's plan. Everything was going perfectly, but everything was ruined. The Nanli and Tokyo, who had been quiet all this time, finally couldn't hold back and started to attack. The training continued. This should have been a bad thing, but it turned into a good thing. The Tokyo and Nanli's troops became the whetstones for Jingyu to train the beast army. Half a month had passed since they entered the forest. In the living quarters, Jingyu looked at the map in front of her and frowned slightly. These days, there were more and more battles between the two sides, but she didn't know why. Just yesterday, the Tokyo and Nanli's troops suddenly withdrew from the Roman forest. This made Jingyu feel very uneasy. Chapter 1105. Boss, something has happened. Just as Jingyu was sitting by the table and contemplating the whole story, Li Weiming suddenly barged into Jingyu's tent. The moment he opened his mouth, Jingyu's uneasy heart skipped a beat. "What's wrong?" Jingyu looked at Li Weiming's grave expression and her heart trembled slightly as she asked uneasily. "Lord Jingyu went missing while he was on patrol," Li Weiming slowly said through gritted teeth. Instantly, all the blood drained from her face. Jingyu's eyes widened as she stared at Li Weiming in disbelief. "What did you say?" "Xing Air just sent news that Lord Jinglang is nowhere to be found even after searching all the lines of defense." Li Weiming looked at Jingyu's expression and hurriedly said, "Lord Xing Air and Miss Shangguan are already searching the perimeter. Perhaps there will be some news. Bring me there." Jingyu rushed out like a madwoman. Li Weiming looked at Jingyu and hurriedly followed behind her. However, the moment Jingyu stepped out of the door, she saw a group of people coming in from outside. Quick, where's Miracle Dr. Qinggu?" A panicked voice called out. Jingyu's expression froze when she saw the person being carried in from outside the tent. Xing Air? The person lying on the stretcher was Xing Air. At this moment, Xing Air's black clothes were almost completely stained with blood. He looked at Jingyu weakly and opened his mouth to speak. In the end, he was carried into Qingji's tent. Linglan. Shangguan Linglan stood in a daze. Her body was covered in blood and there were still traces of tears on her face. "What's wrong? Is something wrong?" Jingyu hurriedly walked over to Shangguan Linglan and asked. She looked at Shangguan Linglan's trembling hands and her eyes were still filled with tears. "Jingyu?" Shangguan Linglan heard Jingyu's voice and finally seemed to regain her senses. She took a deep breath and said, "Big brother Jinglang has been captured. Nanli set up an ambush at the perimeter of the forest. We weren't able to bring Big brother Jinglang back." "How could this be?" When Jingyu heard Shangguan Linglan's words, her hands trembled fiercely and her face was filled with panic. Oh no! Someone must have leaked the news. Shangguan Linglan closed her eyes tightly. Her face was filled with pain as if she was trying to alleviate something. After half a minute, Shangguan Linglan finally sorted out her thoughts and continued to speak to Jingyu. Big brother Jing Lang led the soldiers on a routine patrol today. Xing Er and I were patrolling on the other side. Tokyo and Nanli's soldiers retreated in a strange manner. That's why Big brother Jing Lang ordered us not to leak any information about this patrol. In order to find out what was going on, we went outside the perimeter to find out what was going on. However, we didn't expect Big brother Jing Lang to hear fighting sounds the moment we left the perimeter. By the time Xing Er and I rushed over, it was already too late. Shangguan Linglan carefully recalled what happened. When Jingyu heard Shanghai Linglan's words, her heart trembled. She suddenly thought of something and grabbed Shanghai Linglan's hand. Big brother was taken away by them? He's still alive, right? Yes, their intention seems to be to take Big brother Jing Lang away. Shangguan Linglan carefully recalled the scene and continued, with Big brother Jing Lang's martial arts, he shouldn't have been captured so easily. There must be some inside story. Chapter 1106. I know. Jingyu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Just as Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were talking outside, a cry of pain came from inside the room. It startled Shangguan Linglan so much that he quickly ran inside. Qinggu wiped the sweat off his face as he walked towards Shangguan Linglan. How is it? Shangguan Linglan's eyes were filled with anxiety as he stared at Qinggu in fear. Phew. Xing Er's injuries are very serious. Who could be so ruthless? Qinggu took a deep breath and said, I've already pulled out the poison dart, but I can't cure the poison. What? Aren't you the godly doctor? Why can't you cure this poison? Shangguan Linglan heard Qingji's words and quickly grabbed Qingji's arm. Linglan, don't be so agitated. Let Qinggu finish. Jingyu held Shangguan Linglan's hand and said. Shangguan Linglan probably felt that he had lost his composure and lowered his head slightly. Qinggu understood Shangguan Linglan's reaction very well and sighed. This is a poison specially made by the poison sect. Although I'm from the Godly Doctor Valley, I can't cure this poison. Even if someone can cure it, they might not be able to completely remove it. Qinggu looked steadily at Jingyu and said, the only antidote is in the hands of the 3 leaders of the poison sect. This is the poison sect's most mysterious poison. My Godly Doctor Valley has studied it for an entire lifetime and still hasn't been able to cure it. Qinggu paused as he spoke and then said as if he was explaining, the antidote is in the hands of the Yun brothers. Neilan probably doesn't have it. HM? Why do you say that? When Jingyu heard Qinggu deny that Neilan Moon didn't have the antidote, she frowned in surprise. Neilan Yu is the 3rd miss of the poison sect. She's famous for practicing the art of seduction. Her poisons are all incomparably despicable. Xing Er's poison, on the other hand, is a poison that seals his meridians. If he can't be treated, he'll become a cripple. All I can do is temporarily suppress the poison in his body. Even if there is no antidote, he will be an ordinary person for the rest of his life. He will have no inner strength and his martial arts will be crippled. As soon as Qinggu finished speaking, Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan widened their eyes in shock. So the antidote is in the poison sect. Jingyu slowly closed her eyes. Shangguan Linglan abruptly rose to his feet, his eyes filled with ruthlessness as he said, I'll go steal the antidote back. Stop! Shangguan Linglan had just taken a step when Jingyu suddenly called out to him. Jingyu? Shangguan Linglan looked anxiously at Jingyu. Shangguan Linglan, have you forgotten your status? Jingyu slowly rose to her feet. Her pitch-black eyes were fixed on Shangguan Linglan as she said, Is this something a general should do? I know you're worried about Xing Er's safety, but do you think I'm not worried about Big Brother's safety? Jingyu calmly looked at Shangguan Linglan and said, What's the point of you going now? You'll just fall into the poison sect's trap and lose another life. As soon as Jingyu finished speaking, Shangguan Linglan's body stiffened. He stood in place, unable to speak. Qinggu, are Xing Er's injuries serious? Jing Yu tilted her head to look at Qinggu. Chapter 1107. Don't worry, I'll be able to treat this small injury. Qinggu also stood up and looked at Jing Yu. I'll suppress the poison in Xing Er's body for now. I'll get the antidote in a month. I won't let anything happen to Xing Er. All right, Jing Yu heard Qing Ji's words and nodded slowly. I'll leave Xing Er to you. Jing Yu watched Qinggu nod and turned to leave. Then she looked at Shangguan Linglan's expression and sighed softly. Go and bandage your wound. Think it through before coming to my room. After Jing Yu said this, she turned and went back to her room. She sat on the table and unfolded the map in front of her. As she looked at the lines in front of her, her hands clenched tightly by her sides. When Qin Bai walked into Jing Yu's room, he saw Jing Yu leaning against the table as she stared at the map in front of her. Her calm appearance caused Qin Bai's eyes to narrow slightly. Jing Yu. Qin Bai stood in front of Jing Yu and slowly called out. What's the matter? Jing Yu raised her head. Her eyes were a little dazed as she looked at Jing Yu. Nothing. Qin Bai lowered his head slightly and said, I heard that Jing Lang was taken away by the poison sect. I came to see if there's anything I can help with. Jing Yu's expression changed slightly when she heard Qin Bai's words. She slowly sat down by the table and a cold light flashed in her eyes as she said, The poison sect, they really can't wait to die. Jing Yu. A call came from the door. Jing Yu looked up and saw that Shangguan Linglan had already changed his clothes and was standing in front of Jing Yu. You're here? Jing Yu's expression didn't change when she saw Shangguan Linglan arrive. She looked up slightly and said, Sit. After the three of them sat down, Jing Yu said, What do you think about the poison sect's sudden attack this time? I think it was premeditated. Shangguan Linglan took a deep breath and said, Nan Li and Tokyo suddenly stopped fighting. We must have thought there was a plot and brought people to investigate. The poison sect used this reason to set up an ambush and capture Big Brother Jing Lang. Shangguan Linglan clenched her teeth and said, They only took Big Brother Jing Lang away, not injuring him or taking his life. There is only one reason. Jing Yu, they must have wanted to capture you. Shangguan Linglan stared intently at Jing Yu and said, It's the same for the poison dart and the antidote. It's the same for Big Brother Jing Lang. There's only one reason for that. They want you to go to the poison sect to save someone and find the antidote. Hee hee. Jing Yu chuckled softly. She looked at Shangguan Linglan and said, It looks like you're not stupid after all. You're clear-headed now? Shangguan Linglan's face darkened when he heard Jing Yu's words. He lowered his head and mumbled to himself. He really had been impulsive just now. Now that he was clear-headed, it wasn't hard to figure out the reason behind everything. Since you already know, what do you plan to do now? Shangguan Linglan asked Jing Yu. I'm going to save him and find the antidote, Jing Yu said slowly. But this is a trap. They want you to go and capture you. Shangguan Linglan quickly said when he heard Jing Yu's words. Chapter 1108. Do you mean I can't go? Jing Yu smiled helplessly at Shangguan Linglan and said, This is also why they only captured Big Brother and you guys were able to return. No matter what, I have to save Big Brother. Shangguan Linglan's throat choked slightly when he heard Jing Yu's words. He couldn't say a word. Linglan, I asked you to come because I need your help. Jing Yu raised her head and looked steadily at Shangguan Linglan as she said, I'll go on this rescue mission myself. What? Shangguan Linglan's eyes widened when he heard Jing Yu's words. He looked at Jing Yu in disbelief and opened his mouth to deny it. However, Jing Yu raised her hand and stopped him. She smiled faintly and said, Let me finish. You have to believe me. I will definitely save Big Brother and bring you the antidote. Jing Yu took a deep breath and said, I need you to do me a favor. When I'm not around, you have to protect everyone. You can't act rashly. Even if I can't come back, you can't let anyone save me. Not even you. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with seriousness as she said slowly. But Shangguan Linglan's expression changed when he heard Jing Yu's words. He stared at Jing Yu intently as his heart trembled slightly. If I come back, bring someone to pick me up. Jingyu smiled at Shangguan Linglong and said, Don't worry, I won't let myself die so easily. I still have a lot of things to do. Jingyu? Shangguan Linglong looked at Jingyu's smile and his heart ached. I'll go with you. Just as the two of them were talking, Qin Bai suddenly spoke up. Shangguan Linglong and Jingyu heard Qin Bai's words and looked at Qin Bai with shock in their eyes. Although I'm not familiar with the poison sect, I can't guarantee that the Holy Family isn't involved in this matter. Qin Bai looked sideways at Jingyu and said, Jingyu, I'll go with you. If we run into anyone from the Holy Family, I can help you. Jingyu rejected him without a second thought. She said with a serious expression, It's a dangerous trip. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. I can't let you take the risk. Jingyu, trust me. Qin Bai gripped Jingyu's hand tightly. His dark eyes were filled with sincerity as he said, Let me go with you. I can help you. Qin Bai? Jingyu's eyes were filled with helplessness. She looked at Qin Bai's sincere gaze and his incomparably familiar face and suddenly didn't know how to reject him. She frowned and pulled her hand away from Qin Bai's grasp, then turned her head away. Jingyu's action was very natural, but it still fell into Shangguan Linglong's eyes. When he saw this, surprise flashed through Shangguan Linglong's eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He gave Qin Bai a strange look but didn't say a word. In the end, Jingyu still couldn't convince Qin Bai. Looking at Qin Bai's expression, if she didn't let him go, Jingyu had an inexplicable feeling that Qin Bai would follow her in secret. Since that was the case, Jingyu had no choice but to let Qin Bai go with her. Jingyu wanted to go to the enemy camp alone. Everyone was talking about it, but Jingyu was resolute. No one could persuade her. Qinggu was also quite shocked by Jingyu's actions. He even summoned people from 5 other places, hoping that someone could convince Jingyu. Chapter 1109. However, it was clear that it was useless. There could not be a single mistake in this rescue mission. Jingyu would not allow herself to make any mistakes. In these 3 days, Jingyu had already explained everything that needed to be done. All that was left was to see the results. Assassination. Rescue. Jingyu lowered her head and looked at the shiny dagger in her hand. Her eyes were filled with a cold light. She was no stranger to this. Jingyu. A voice called out to her from behind. Jingyu turned around to look. Fang Zicheng, why are you here? Jingyu blinked her eyes and asked in surprise when she saw Fang Zicheng, who was dressed in white, walking over slowly. I heard that you are going to the Tokyo-S camp? Ever since Fang Zicheng came to Jinling town with Xiao Yuling, he had never left. He had always been by Jinglang's side. Because his martial arts were not very good, he just stayed here. Yes. Jingyu replied faintly. She did not say anything else. I heard that Qin Bai will be going with you? Fang Zicheng asked again. Yes. Jingyu frowned and asked Fang Zicheng, What's wrong? Is there a problem? Nothing. Fang Zicheng smiled faintly. His gaze fell on the dagger in Jingyu's hand. Then, his gaze fell on the black mark on Jingyu's middle finger. He paused for a moment as if he wanted to see what it was. Jingyu. However, just as Fang Zicheng had this thought, he heard someone calling out to him from behind. Jingyu lowered her hand and turned around to see who it was. Qin Bai, you're here. Jingyu smiled faintly when she saw Qin Bai walk over. What's wrong? What are you talking about? Am I disturbing you? Qin Bai was slightly surprised when he saw Fang Zicheng. Then, he smiled politely and asked Fang Zicheng and Jingyu. I'm fine. Fang Zicheng smiled faintly and looked at Qin Bai with a pair of smiling eyes. The smile on his face was very gentle. He looked at Qin Bai and said, Speaking of which, I haven't spoken much with young Master Qin. Haha. Qin Bai laughed and said with arched eyebrows, Jingyu has told me about you a long time ago, the son of Grand Secretary Fang Zicheng. Really? Fang Zicheng smiled helplessly and said, I believe that's not how she introduced me. Ah. Qin Bai laughed happily when he heard this. Jingyu stood aside and looked at Fang Zicheng with disdain. Old fox. I heard that young Master Qin is from the Holy Family? The smile on Fang Zicheng's face didn't change, and the words he asked were also very casual, like a chat between friends. It was so casual that no one would feel bored. Yes. Qin Bai's expression didn't change when he heard Fang Zicheng's question. He smiled faintly and said, "Why? Young Master Fang, do you know a lot about the Holy Family?" Fang Zicheng shook his head and said with a smile, "I'm just curious." "Hey, Fang Zicheng, why are you so talkative?" Jing Yu couldn't stand it anymore. She glared at Fang Zicheng and said, "If you have something to say, say it. If not, get out of here." "Little Yaya, I just got here. You're driving me away. Aren't you too heartless?" Fang Zicheng looked at Jing Yu with hidden bitterness. "You shut up. What are you shouting for? I'm getting goosebumps." Jing Yu made a disgusted face and stared at Fang Zicheng. "You can play here by yourself. Qin Bai, let's go." Chapter 11:10. Hey, hey, hey. Fang Zicheng hurriedly grabbed Jing Yu and said helplessly, "This is the pouch that Shangguan Linglan asked me to give you. He said that he asked for a protective amulet and asked you to wear it." Protective amulet? Jing Yu raised her hand and took the pouch Fang Zicheng handed over. She said in a conflicted tone, "Since when did Linglan trust this person? Has she been assimilated by Second Xing? He asked for it out of goodwill for you. Is this how you treat him?" Fang Zicheng complained bitterly when he heard Jing Yu's words. Jing Yu rolled her eyes at Fang Zicheng and said, "You're the heartless one." But Fang Zicheng was infuriated by Jing Yu's words. However, he couldn't say a word as he watched Jing Yu turn and leave. Qin Bai watched this scene quietly from the side. When he saw that Jing Yu had left, he bowed apologetically to Fang Zicheng and quickly caught up with Jing Yu. What Qin Bai didn't notice was that the moment he turned around, Fang Zicheng's originally warm expression froze. The iciness in his expression was clearly visible. Fang Zicheng's dark eyes stared at Qin Bai's back and he frowned slightly. Jing Yu and Qin Bai reorganized themselves and made arrangements for everything at hand. They finally decided to set off for the Tokyo camp early the next morning to rescue Jing Lang and find the antidote for Xing Air. The morning fog was very thick. Jing Yu stood at the entrance of the valley. She was dressed in the same black clothes and her long black hair was tied into a neat ponytail. Qin Bai was standing beside her and he was also dressed in black. The two of them stood in front of the valley with calm eyes. "Let's go." The sky was still gray. It was still dark. Before anyone woke up, Jing Yu and Qin Bai had already left. "Aren't you going to say goodbye to them?" Qin Bai turned slightly to look at Jing Yu and asked. "There's no need." Jing Yu shook her head slowly. She turned and led Qin Bai out of the valley. She breathed in the air outside the forest and her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "Saying goodbye will only add to the sadness." When Qin Bai heard Jing Yu's reply, he raised his eyebrows slightly and didn't say anything. Standing outside the forest, Jing Yu blew her whistle as usual and rode Yin Jian and Yin Feng out of the forest. The cold wind blew past their ears. Qin Bai rode on Yin Jian and silently looked at Jing Yu's back. The forest was silent. Two gray wolves rode on Jing Yu and Qin Bai. They were like a gust of wind. Their strong figures were also dressed in black and their faces were also calm as they dashed out of the forest. After entering the Roman forest for so long, they finally came out of the forest again. Under the golden sunlight, Jing Yu and Qin Bai slowly stopped on the road outside the forest. Jing Yu flipped off the ground and patted Yin Feng's head. She turned and looked at Qin Bai. "We'll have to walk the rest of the way by ourselves." Jing Yu raised her head and looked at Qin Bai. She watched the two wolves, Yin Arrow and Yin Wind, run into the forest. Then she looked ahead. Jing Yu and Qin Bai's actions didn't cause much of a commotion. At this moment, another scene was happening in the Tokyo-S camp. Chapter 11:11. On this plain, the Tokyo and Cebu's troops were stationed. When night fell, the tents lit up and the sound of running water could be heard. Behind the screen, a delicate figure was slowly moving. "Shadow!" A gentle and charming voice sounded as a black figure appeared behind the screen. "Master!" The man was dressed in black and his expression didn't change at all. He bowed as he stood behind the screen. He could feel the water vapor coming from behind the screen. There was a faint fragrance coming from the water vapor. "How is the matter I asked you to do?" The familiar voice sounded and the sound of water dripping could be heard. A graceful figure slowly stood up from behind the screen. Her slender fingers took the screen and draped it over her body. "It's all done." Such a beautiful woman coming out of the bath. The shadow stood there expressionlessly and didn't look at her. "Very good." The barefoot figure walked out. Her body was full of temptation. Step by step, she approached the shadow. She narrowed her eyes and said, "You did very well this time. Tell me, how should I reward you?" When Nalen Yu's words fell, the shadow's body stiffened for a moment. He then expressionlessly lowered his head and said, "Being able to do things for master is something this subordinate should do." Peh. Nalen Yu chuckled. Her eyes were filled with charm. Her delicate body moved closer to the shadow. The fragrance coming from her body made the shadow's eyes droop. Nalen Yu raised her hand and hooked it around the shadow's neck. "How about you let me serve you well this time?" When Nalen Yu's words fell, the shadow's body stiffened for a moment. "This subordinate doesn't dare." The shadow took a step back and knelt on the ground. He lowered his head and replied. "Who?" Nalen Yu's hand was empty. She looked at the shadow that was kneeling on the ground and her face was filled with anger. She lifted her foot and fiercely kicked the shadow's body. The shadow didn't dodge and just fell to the ground. It lowered its eyes and didn't say a word. "Who do you think you are?" Nalen Yu's face was full of anger. She suddenly turned around and said, "Get out." "Yes." The shadow lowered his head in response. Then he stood up with an expressionless face and walked outside. The shadow stood outside the tent and watched as a man walked into Nalen Yu's tent. This was the guard that was guarding Nalen Yu's tent. The shadow naturally recognized him. When the shadow saw that the man was about to enter the tent, he slowly stepped forward and blocked the man's path. "Let him in." The shadow hadn't even opened its mouth to speak when Nalen Yu's voice came from behind it. The shadow's body stiffened when it heard this. It stood there silently for a moment before slowly moving aside. The guard threw a playful glance at Shadow before swaggering into the tent. Not long after, sounds that would make one blush resounded from the tent. The mixed voices of men and women were so ear-piercing in the middle of the night. The shadow stood in front of the tent and could clearly hear the sounds coming from inside. His pitch-black eyes moved slightly, but he didn't move. The expression on his face was still the same. The silence was terrifying. After an unknown amount of time, the sounds coming from inside the tent slowly stopped. The shadow stood in front of the tent motionlessly. Chapter 11-12. Let's go. Nalen Yu lifted the tent flap and walked out with a satisfied expression on her face. She glanced at the shadow indifferently and then walked forward. The shadow nodded and followed behind Nalen Yu. Nalen Yu easily arrived at a tent filled with guards. She lifted the curtain of the tent and a thick smell of blood wafted out. Nalen Yu's lips curled into a faint smile as she stood in the middle of the tent. "Did I serve you well?" Inside the tent was a large cage. In this cage, there was a person covered in blood lying inside. His messy hair covered his face and it was impossible to see what his face looked like. Since the young miss ordered us, we naturally wouldn't dare to delay. The two guards beside her respectfully stood beside Nalen Yu and bowed as they answered Nalen Yu's words. "Raise his head." The corners of Nalen Yu's mouth curled up into a satisfied smile. She slowly walked towards the iron cage. The two guards hurriedly moved a large chair to Nalen Yu's side and sat down at the entrance of the iron cage. "Get up." That person raised his foot and kicked the door of the iron cage. The person inside the iron cage didn't move at all. One of them carried a basin of water forward and fiercely splashed that person's face. Only then did that person wake up with a start. The person covered in wounds shook his head, revealing his entire face. He had handsome eyebrows and sharp eyes. An incomparably handsome face was revealed in front of everyone. "Xiao Chen, are you still not willing?" Nalen Yu looked at Xiao Chen's handsome face. Her eyes were slightly dazed for a moment before she said faintly. Xiao Chen, who was originally supposed to be dead, was currently sitting up with his arms covered in wounds. He looked at Nailan Yu with a pair of indifferent eyes and lowered his head without saying a word. Xiao Chen, I'll ask you again. Are you coming with me or not? A trace of anger appeared in Nailan Yu's eyes. She looked at Xiao Chen, who didn't show any emotion, and fiercely said, Do you think you can still see Jingyu? Let me tell you, Jingyu thought you were dead a long time ago. You're already a dead man to Jingyu. Nailan Yu looked at Xiao Chen emotionally and said, I swear, as long as you lower your head, nothing will happen to you. I'll take you back to the poison sect. Whatever you want to do, we'll do it together, all right? Nailan Yu looked at Xiao Chen expectantly, but no matter what she said, Xiao Chen just hung his head and remained indifferent. Xiao Chen, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Nailan Yu was quite angry at Xiao Chen's attitude. Her face was full of anger as she roared at Xiao Chen. But the only response she got was endless silence. It had already been a month, but Xiao Chen hadn't said a single word. It could even be said that he hadn't even looked at Nailan Yu. He just quietly hid on the cold ground, not moving at all. Where's the poison? Use all of it, I want him to talk. I want him to talk. Nailan Yu stood up and grabbed the guard in front of her as she shouted angrily. Third young miss, there's no more poison that can be used. The guard gulped in fear and said, We've used all the methods we can, but he still won't talk. Chapter 11:13. Trash. A bunch of trash. Nailan Yu lifted her foot and fiercely kicked the guard's body. Her eyes were filled with anger. I don't care what method you have, I want him to speak. Nailan Yu slowly stood up. Her eyes were filled with ice as she said, Do you understand? I want him to speak. Yes. The two guards hurriedly knelt on the ground and repeatedly answered. Nailan Yu raised her hand and grabbed the iron cage. Her eyes were filled with ice as she stared at Xiao Chen and said, Let me tell you a piece of good news. Jing Lang has been captured. Jingyu will definitely come to save him. She will be here soon. Aren't you happy? The moment Xiao Chen heard Nailan Yu's words, he suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with astonishment. It doesn't matter if you're happy. I definitely won't let Jingyu see you. The only thing you'll see is Jingyu's corpse. Nailan Yu saw that Xiao Chen had such a big reaction when he heard Jingyu's name. The jealousy in her heart was about to swallow her whole. Walala! The iron chains that locked Xiao Chen's hands and feet shook. When Xiao Chen heard Nailan Yu's words, he seemed to have gone crazy as he rushed towards her. The ruthlessness in his eyes was clearly visible. You want to kill me? Nailan Yu silently took a step back. She looked at Xiao Chen's appearance and the corners of her mouth hooked up into a cold smile as she said, Xiao Chen, don't worry, I will personally dig out Jingyu's heart and place it in front of you. Don't you love her? I'll let you take a good look at her heart. Nailan Yu's cold-blooded words and such a beautiful face saying such words caused people's hearts to tremble. Their faces were filled with fear. Nailan Yu looked at Xiao Chen's crazy appearance and the killing intent in her eyes became even stronger. The Xiao Chen that only treated her well, because of Jingyu's appearance, no longer cared about her. As long as Jingyu died, Jingyu would definitely change his mind. Xiao Chen, you have to believe that I love you. As long as you agree, I'll take you away. Nailan Yu looked at Xiao Chen with a tender expression as she spoke. But, although Xiao Chen didn't say anything, his actions were even more provocative than his words. He spat a mouthful of blood onto Nailan Yu's body. Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with disgust and ridicule, causing Nailan Yu to almost go crazy. Xiao Chen. Nailan Yu's chest heaved up and down as she fiercely glared at Xiao Chen and said, Beat him. Beat him until he gives in. Nailan Yu's face was cold as she walked out of the tent. Not long after, a series of terrifying sounds came from within the tent. However, there wasn't a single cry of pain. Nailan Yu turned her head to look into the tent and fiercely clenched her fists. Jingyu had no idea what was happening here. The plains outside Jinling town were vast beyond compare. The Tokyo and Nanli's troops had set up camp here. The Holy Family and Poison Sex people were also living in this large camp. At this moment, Jing Yu and Qin Bai were standing on a hill in the plains, looking at the scenery in front of them. That's where the Tokyo and Nan Li's troops are stationed. Jing Yu looked at the scenery in the distance, her golden eyes slightly narrowed. In her eyes, the scenery in front of her was incomparably clear. Chapter 11:14. The Poison Sect and the Holy Family are both there, but I don't know where they are. Jing Yu frowned. Although the two armies are allies, they haven't merged. We need to find out where the main camp is before we can move. Jing Yu frowned. She tilted her head and looked at Qin Bai. Let's sneak in tonight and figure out the route. Then we can plan our next move. Alright, I'll go with you. Qin Bai nodded in response. No, the two of us will expose our tracks. Jing Yu frowned and shook her head. We'll move separately. Our goal this time is just to figure out the terrain. Just don't expose our tracks. Can you do that? All right. Qin Bai nodded slowly in response to Jing Yu's words. Remember, you must be careful. If anything seems off, retreat immediately. Jing Yu frowned as she looked at Qin Bai. I know. You too. Qin Bai's eyes revealed a faint smile. He looked at Jing Yu and curled his lips. Don't worry. Don't underestimate me. All right. Jing Yu heard Qin Bai's words and smiled faintly. She agreed to Qin Bai's words. Let's go. We need to prepare a few things. Jing Yu turned and entered the forest again, quietly waiting for night to come. Qin Bai narrowed his eyes. He glanced at the large camp on the plains, then turned away indifferently. Jing Yu had already made her preparations. Lu Miaoqiu and the Crown Prince, who were far away in the Dongqing Imperial City, finally returned to the Imperial City. The originally bustling Imperial City seemed to have become somewhat unfamiliar. Lu Miaoqiu sat in the carriage and lifted a corner of the curtain slightly to look outside. The buildings were the same and the people didn't seem to have changed. However, for some reason, when Lu Miaoqiu looked at the people in front of her, her eyes were filled with a sense of unfamiliarity. It was as if she had been separated by a lifetime. The carriage drove towards the Imperial Palace. Lu Miaoqiu slowly lowered the curtains and closed her eyes. What's wrong? Are you nervous? Xiao Yuling's voice sounded in Lu Miaoqiu's ears. Lu Miaoqiu raised her eyebrows in surprise and looked at Xiao Yuling from the corner of her eyes. She narrowed her eyes and said, Which eye of yours saw that I was nervous? Xiao Yuling's face stiffened. Lu Miaoqiu. Oh. Lu Miaoqiu replied expressionlessly. Xiao Yuling was so angry that her face turned green. No matter who she was in front of, Xiao Yuling always thought that she had a good temper. However, she didn't know why every time she spoke to Lu Miaoqiu, she would fly into a rage. The Crown Prince's Eastern Palace was the same as before. There were no changes. Lu Miaoqiu, the Crown Princess, had been brought back. Not only that, even before they reached the Imperial City, rumors about Lu Miaoqiu and Jing Yu had spread everywhere. It was said that the Crown Princess and the 9th Imperial Concubine had fallen out and quarreled. Now, everyone in the Imperial City knew about it. The first thing Lu Miaoqiu did when she returned to the Imperial City was to go to the Emperor and ask for forgiveness. After such a long time, Lu Miaoqiu finally saw Ning Xiangyuan again. Ning Xiangyuan was sitting beside Xiao Yi. She was wearing a phoenix robe. She had exquisite makeup on her face, and her dark eyes were staring at Jing Yu. Her chest was exposed, and every man's eyes couldn't help but stare at her, right? Chapter 11:15. Xiao Yi seemed to dote on Ning Xiangyuan very much, allowing Ning Xiangyuan to sit beside him. Lu Miaoqiu quietly knelt under the Tang dynasty. She glanced at Xiao Yi and Ning Xiangyuan before continuing to kneel. Xiao Yi looked even older than before. He was only in his 40s, but there were some white hairs around his ears. Lu Miaoqiu still remembered that when she left, Xiao Yi did not look like this. She did not expect that in such a short period of time, there would be such a big change. Since the Crown Princess has recognized her mistake, Zhen will not pursue it further for the Crown Prince's sake. Xiao Ye's voice was filled with exhaustion. He frowned slightly and looked sideways at Ning Xiangyan. What does the Empress think? The Crown Princess did not do it on purpose. I heard that it was because of the 9th imperial concubine. Ning Xiangyuan slowly straightened her body, a faint smile on her lips. She slowly turned to look at Lu Miaoqiu and said, after all, Qinxie and the Crown Princess were once good sisters. Since the Empress has said so, Zhen will not say more this time. Xiao Yi turned to look at Lu Miaoqiu and said, but there must be punishment. Crown Princess, you will be punished to copy Buddhist scriptures 100 times as a warning to others. Are you willing? Qinxie thanks the Emperor. Lu Miaoqiu lowered her head and responded. Your Majesty, Qinxie and the Crown Princess have not seen each other for a long time. Can Qinxie and the Crown Princess catch up? Ning Xiangyuan looked at Xiao Yi with a dignified expression and said, Ah. Xiao Yi heard Ning Xiangyuan's words and his eyes were filled with satisfaction. He patted Ning Xiangyuan's hand and said, the Empress is indeed sensible. Since that is the case, you can catch up. Zhen and the Crown Prince also have matters to discuss. Thank you, Your Majesty. Ning Xiangyuan seemed to be very shy as she lowered her head and respectfully sent Xiao Yi out of the palace. Only then did she turn around and look at Lu Miaoqiu. The corner of her mouth hooked up into a faint smile as she walked over and said, Little sister Lu, quickly get up. There are no outsiders here, so there is no need to kneel. Thank you, Your Highness. Lu Miaoqiu stood up as instructed, but her head was still lowered. This consort knows that you're feeling terrible right now. Ning Xiangyuan raised her hand to hold Lu Miaoqiu's hand and said earnestly, this consort was also like this back then. Now you know what kind of person Jingyu is, right? Lu Miaoqiu still had her head lowered. Although she did not speak, her tightly clenched hands revealed Lu Miaoqiu's current emotions. Ning Xiangyuan clearly saw Lu Miaoqiu's actions and smiled faintly. She said comfortingly, Crown Princess, to be able to sit on the position of Crown Princess, you are definitely not an ordinary person. I know that you hate Jingyu to the core. Since that is the case, why don't we cooperate? Ning Xiangyuan looked indifferently at Lu Miaoqiu and said, Crown Princess, go back and think about it. You can give me an answer at any time. When Lu Miaoqiu returned to the Eastern Palace, the sky had already darkened. The Eastern Palace was lit up with lights. Xiao Yuling and Lu Miaoqiu had returned together. A servant came forward to take off their outer robes before the two sat down in the room. What did the Empress say to you? Xiao Yuling raised her hand to pour a cup of tea for herself. She paused and then poured a cup for Lu Miaoqiu. Her expression was calm as she asked. Chapter 11:16. What else can I say? Lu Miaoqiu smiled and said, she just wants me to work with her and help her. You agree? Xiao Yuling raised her eyebrows and looked at Lu Miaoqiu. Do you think I would agree so easily? Lu Miaoqiu looked at the tea that Xiao Yuling had poured for her and paused for a moment. She raised her hand and took a sip. Then, as if she found it funny, she said, Your Highness the Crown Prince is pouring tea for me? Could it be that you encountered something interesting with the Emperor? Ta. When Xiao Yuling heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, her hand holding the teacup paused. She smiled and said, If I didn't encounter anything interesting, I can't pour tea for you? If you didn't encounter anything interesting and suddenly poured tea for me? Lu Miaoqiu turned her gaze to Xiao Yuling. She narrowed her eyes and said, Then I have to think carefully. Is this tea poisoned, or is there a problem? Xiao Yuling's face darkened. She took a deep breath and turned her head to say, The Emperor wants me to supervise the government. HM? He wants you to participate in the government? A hint of surprise appeared in Lu Miaoqiu's eyes as she furrowed her brows. With a serious expression, she said, It seems that Ning Xiangyuan's probing has begun. If you manage your political affairs well, it seems that we have thought of the same thing. Xiao Yuling smiled and said, Ning Xiangyuan has taken a dangerous step. You have to know how great the temptation of participating in the government is. If I use this opportunity to flip the cards, the throne is almost at your fingertips. How can the temptation not be great? As Xiao Yuling said this, the light in her eyes was very obvious. What? Are you tempted? Lu Miaoqiu calmly put down the teacup in her hand and said, "If this is a trap set by Ning Xiangyuan to lure you into, then, don't worry, I will collect your corpse." When Xiao Yuling heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, she frowned and said, "Can't you say something nice? Did I say something unpleasant?" Lu Miaoqiu blinked in confusion and said, "Or, Your Highness, you don't need me to collect your corpse?" Xiao Yuling silently chose to shut her mouth. She downed the tea in her hand as though she was venting. She stood up and walked towards the inner room. As she took off her outer clothes, Lu Miaoqiu looked at Xiao Yuling's actions and frowned slightly. "Your Highness, this is my room." It was a clear order for him to leave. "I know." Xiao Yuling responded calmly. She placed her outer robe on the screen and said indifferently, "Today, I want the crown princess to serve me in bed." Lu Miaoqiu's expression froze. Her eyes were filled with shock as she looked at Xiao Yuling. "What? You don't understand?" When Xiao Yuling saw Lu Miaoqiu's change in expression, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She seemed to find Lu Miaoqiu's expression very interesting. She raised her brows slightly and said calmly, "Shouldn't the crown princess fulfill her duties as the crown princess?" "Xiao Yuling!" Lu Miaoqiu stood up with an ashen expression. She glared fiercely at Xiao Yuling, who had taken off her outer clothes and was slowly walking in. "HM?" Xiao Yuling stood next to Lu Miaoqiu. When she saw her angry expression, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. Chapter 11:17. "Linglan, why are you here?" Jing Yu frowned. "Didn't she say it clearly before she left? Thank goodness I have burial flower. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to find you." Shangguan Linglan got off the black qilin and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Jing Yu. "Thank goodness I made it in time. Otherwise, we would have been in big trouble. What's wrong?" Jing Yu raised her eyebrows and looked at Shangguan Linglan in confusion. "Brother Jing Lang is back." Shangguan Linglan looked at Jing Yu and said, "Brother Jing Lang wasn't taken away. He's back." "What?" Jing Yu's brain short-circuited for a moment. She stared at Shangguan Linglan in shock. "On the morning you left, Big Brother Jing Lang came back. And I also brought back news that Dong Qing and Nanli have already set up an inescapable trap and are just waiting for you to rush in. If it weren't for the ink qilin and burial flower, I would be here to collect your corpses. What's going on?" Jing Yu was completely confused and frowned at Shangguan Linglan. "Let's talk about it when we get back. I'm afraid that Nanli and the Tokyo will chase us here." Shangguan Linglan didn't stop and led Jing Yu and Qin Bai back. Such a strange farce ended with Jing Yu returning to the forest. Jing Lang really came back, but he came back with injuries. Inside the wooden house, Jing Yu rushed back regardless of day and night. Her body was covered in dust and her face was a little tired. At this moment he was sitting on a chair in the wooden house. Jing Lang and Shangguan Linglan were also in the wooden house. "Brother, you're saying that someone saved you while you were being taken away by Nanli. But you don't know who it was?" Jing Yu frowned, her eyes filled with confusion. "Not only that, you also overheard Nanli and the Tokyo's plan?" Jing Lang's body was wrapped in gauze. At this moment he was sitting on the bed and looking at Jing Yu. He said, "Their goal was to set a trap. They used me as bait to lure you to rescue me. They set up an inescapable net." "Then who is the person who saved you?" Jing Yu frowned deeply. Her eyes were filled with doubt. No matter how hard she racked her brains, she could not figure out who had the ability to save someone from Nanli's clutches. Furthermore, they had acted so soon after they had left the forest. She really couldn't figure it out. "I don't know." Jing Lang also frowned and shook his head. "It's a bit like a Jianghu person, but why would a Jianghu person come to the Roman forest?" Everyone was puzzled. Jing Lang's body had not yet recovered. Jing Yu left the house after speaking for a while. Standing on the lawn outside the house, Jing Yu sighed deeply and slowly frowned. Since Jing Lang was fine, there was naturally no need to rescue him. However, Second Xing's poison still needed to be cured. However, with Qin Gu by his side, there was no need to be in such a hurry to find the antidote for Second Xing. He just needed to arrange it properly and make sure nothing went wrong. Jingyu returned to her hut to rest. The next morning, Jingyu received news that Xing Er, who had been in a coma for so many days, had finally woken up. "Madam." Second Xing's face was still a little pale. Seeing Jingyu's arrival, he called out and seemed to want to sit up with his arms propped up. Chapter 11:18. No need to be so courteous, just lie down. Jingyu sat down on a chair beside Xing Er's bed, asking Qingge about Xing Er's condition. She found out that Xing Er's internal injuries were mostly healed, and the most important thing now was the poison in his body. Currently, Xing Er did not have any internal energy, and was no different from an ordinary person. Shangguan Linglan had been taking care of Xing Er day and night, and seeing that Xing Er had awoken, she was relieved that he was fine. "Xing Er, do not worry, your poison will definitely be cured." Jingyu sat in the room, looking at Xing Er as she said, "The most important thing now is to heal your injuries. As for the antidote, I will think of a way. Your subordinate understands." After Xing Er found out about his condition, he did not change much. Hearing Jingyu's words, he slowly nodded in agreement. In the following time, Shangguan Linglan spent the nights taking care of Xing Er, while in the day, she trained the beast army with Jingyu. After half a month of training, Xing Er's internal injuries were finally healed with Qing Ji's help. As for the Wanshou army that Jingyu had painstakingly built, they finally showed their true abilities. Their teamwork, their meticulously crafted weapons and armor, as well as the saddle ropes made by the jackal, tiger leopard, were all completed perfectly. It had to be said that Jin Hai's skills were not to be underestimated, and this level of craftsmanship caused Jingyu to sigh in amazement. As the training of the tiger leopard drew to a close, Jingyu, who had been busy the entire day, returned home. She saw Xing Er standing on the hill, carving wood from a boulder, a dagger in his hand, as if he was doing something interesting. Jingyu smiled faintly as she walked toward Xing Er. Ever since his injuries had healed, he could no longer sit still and would walk around with nothing to do. Jingyu had seen him walk around many times. "What a beautiful wooden fish." Jingyu's voice sounded faintly. Xing Er was so shocked that he almost cut his hand. When he saw Jingyu standing behind him, he hurriedly stood up and said, "Madam, this subordinate, there's no need to be so formal." When Jingyu saw Xing Er's expression, she shook her head and sat down on a rock nearby. Every time she heard Xing Er call her "thum," Jingyu's heart would ache uncontrollably. "Xing Er, tell me about Xiaoqun." Jingyu raised her hand to look at the sky and pursed her lips slightly. "Master." Xing Er's eyes widened slightly when he heard Jingyu's words. Because of Jingyu, Xing Er and the others didn't dare to mention anything about Xiaoqun in front of Jingyu. They were afraid that they would agitate Jingyu. "It's fine. Speak." Jingyu slowly lowered her head and said, "I want to hear about Xiaoqun from you. You've been with Xiaoqun for a long time, right?" Xing Er stood beside Jingyu and lowered his head slightly. He seemed to be organizing his words as he slowly told her about Xiaoqun. Xing Er wasn't a talkative person, but this time, he seemed to have endless things to say. He had been with Xiaoqun through fire and water, received orders, killed, saved, and harmed. He knew everything clearly. He had treated Xiaoqun as his master, but Xiaoqun had never treated him as a servant. "Madam, do you still remember how Master was when you met him in the Roman forest?" Xing Er seemed to have thought of something as he tilted his head slightly to look at Jingyu and said, "At that time, Master was being chased by the second prince and escaped into the forest to shake off his pursuers." Chapter 11:19. "Of course I remember." Jingyu nodded with a faint smile when she heard Xing Er's words. Master was seriously injured in the middle of the night and thought that he would be safe after escaping into the forest. He didn't expect to step on a trap and his calf was injured quite badly. It must have left a deep scar. That trap was set by Madam to catch prey, right? Xing Er lowered his head and looked at Jingyu as he spoke. I didn't expect him to be so unlucky." Jingyu smiled. As long as she heard Xing Er's words, Jingyu could almost imagine Xiaoqun's appearance when he stepped on the trap. However, Xiaoqun's calf was injured? Wait a minute, Xiao Chen's calf was injured. Xing what did you just say? Xiao Chen's calf was injured because he stepped on a trap? Jing Yu seemed to have thought of something as she suddenly stood up. Her eyes widened slightly as she stared at Xing and asked. Xing blinked blankly when he saw Jing Yu's sudden emotional outburst. The injury on his calf. Trap. Jing Yu's heart suddenly shrank as if she had thought of something. She hurriedly rushed down the mountain. Xing was quite frightened by Jing Yu's emotional state and hurriedly ran after her. However, his injuries hadn't fully recovered yet. He couldn't do any strenuous exercise and could only watch as Jing Yu rushed down the mountain. What? What's wrong? Jing Yu happened to be outside to get some fresh air. Because he was injured, it wasn't easy for him to come out for a walk. When he saw Jing Yu's panicked expression, his heart tightened and he hurriedly went forward to stop her. Big brother. Jing Yu grabbed Jing Lang's hand excitedly and said, Quick, I want to go to Xiao Chen's grave. I want to open a museum. What did you say? Jing Lang's eyes narrowed when he heard Jing Yu's words. That body might not be Xiao Chen's. Jing Yu was so excited that she couldn't speak coherently. The commotion attracted Shangguan Linglong, Qing Gu, and the others. As soon as they heard Jing Yu's words, their eyes widened. Are you confused? Jing Lang looked at Jing Yu worriedly and said, Did you forget? You saw Xiao Chen die with your own eyes. It won't happen. Jing Yu's eyes became misty. She grabbed Jing Lang's hand excitedly and said, I helped the body change into new clothes. I saw the scar on his calf. It was an arrow wound. But Xing said that the wound on Xiao Chen's calf was caused by a trap. The trap used bamboo, not arrows. Jing Yu became more and more excited as she spoke. She grabbed Jing Lang's hand tightly and said, That body isn't Xiao Chen's. I want to open the coffin and examine the body. Everyone's eyes widened when they heard Jing Yu's words. Xing who had chased after them, also heard Jing Yu's words. His eyes narrowed and widened as he looked at Jing Yu with fear. Is what you said true? Jing Lang was deeply shocked. If what Jing Yu said was true, then, if the body that was buried wasn't Xiao Chen's, then whose body could it be? Where was the real Xiao Chen's body? Who created a fake body? Yes. Jing Yu nodded firmly. Ninth brother has been buried for a long time. His body has already decayed. Also, if it's really ninth brother's body, wouldn't it be disrespectful to open the coffin after he was buried? Ninth sister-in-law Do? Qing Gu frowned. Chapter 11:20. He really couldn't agree with such a method. Qing Gu, that's not Xiao Chen. It's not. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with agitation as she looked at Qing Gu and said, I'm begging you. Just let me confirm it. I just want to know if that is Xiao Chen. Jing Yu's pleading tone made Qing Ji's throat tighten. When had Jing Yu ever begged someone so humbly before? But the deceased is already dead. If we open the coffin now, it's really... Qing Gu frowned as he felt extremely conflicted. Jing Yu, go and open it. At that moment, Shangguan Linglong suddenly stepped forward. He looked at Jing Yu with a resolute expression and said, I also don't believe that the ninth emperors would die so easily. I'll go with you. That's right. Jing Lang also looked at Jing Yu firmly and said, Go and open it. If the person buried there really isn't the ninth emperors, then perhaps the death of the ninth emperors was a huge conspiracy. Jing Yu looked at everyone's faces as tears welled up in her eyes. At that moment, Jing Yu suddenly felt extremely emotional. She had a feeling that the four benefits had been rekindled. Jing Yu really didn't want to give up on her last ray of hope. No, definitely not. Qing Gu quickly jumped out when he saw everyone's expressions and said righteously, I definitely won't let you dig up ninth brother's grave. Let me go. As expected, Qing Gu was tied up by Li Weiming and the rest. Jing Yu didn't want to stop for even a moment. She rushed to Xiao Chen's grave that very night. Li Weiming brought the ink Qilin, Jing Yu, and Shangguan Linglong along with Qing Gu. Xing and Jing Lang's injuries hadn't healed yet, so the two of them could only wait in the forest. The next afternoon, everyone finally arrived at Xiao Chen's grave. They hadn't been here for a long time. The grass in the grave had already grown, and there were fallen leaves everywhere. There was also a thick layer of dust on the glossy tombstone. Jingyu stared at the tombstone and exchanged glances with Shangguan Linglan. Then, she picked up a large wooden knife and started digging. Li Weiming and the rest also stepped forward. Qinggu was tied up and thrown to one side. He watched everyone dig up the grave with his own eyes. He kept shouting and screaming, but his mouth was gagged. He could only lie on the ground and cry without tears. As he watched Jingyu, Shangguan Linglan, and the rest, he wailed in his heart. "Ninth brother, I've let you down. My grave has been dug up by others. I've let you down." While Qinggu was crying, Jingyu, Shangguan Linglan, and the rest finally touched the lid of the coffin. Their eyes lit up with joy as they finally revealed the complete coffin. Jingyu's heart couldn't help but beat violently when she saw the coffin in front of her. Was the person inside really Xiaoqin, or was it an imposter? Jingyu clenched her fists tightly and raised her hand to wipe the sweat off her face. She stared at the coffin and lifted her head slightly. Her eyes were filled with determination as she looked at Li Weiming and Shangguan Linglan. Shangguan Linglan and Li Weiming both nodded slowly. Everyone shouted as they stepped forward and used their large knives to pry open the coffin in front of them. Qinggu knew that it was useless to stop them. He wriggled his body and sat up. His eyes widened as he watched the situation unfold. Ha! The lid of the coffin was successfully opened. A rotting smell filled the air. Everyone was prepared and held their breaths. When they saw the rotting corpse in front of them, Jingyu couldn't wait to jump in. Chapter 11:21. Jingyu lifted Xiaoqian's leg with a trembling hand under everyone's gaze. The flesh on his thigh had already rotted and the scars couldn't be seen clearly. However, Jingyu could clearly see that the scars were wrinkled. Jingyu slowly reached over and easily removed the scars. Her eyes widened slightly. As if she had thought of something, she abruptly removed the corpse's clothes. She could clearly see that the original scars had all wrinkled up and some of them had even fallen off. Those weren't real scars at all. They had been added on by someone else. This person wasn't Xiaoqin. Jingyu's eyes were filled with joy. She lifted her head and looked at the shocked faces of the crowd. She held the scars tightly in her hand and stood up. She jumped onto the ground and lifted her hand to close the lid of the coffin. "It's fake. It's not Xiaoqin." Jingyu's eyes were filled with joy and excitement. She looked at Shangguan Linglan and said, "Xiaoqin is still alive. He's not dead. He's not dead. That's great, Xiaoqin. He's still alive." Jingyu held the scars tightly in her hand. When Qinggu heard this, his eyes widened slightly. He seemed to want to say something, but because his mouth was gagged, he could only weakly twist his body. Jingyu and everyone else heard Qingji's voice. Only then did they realize that Qinggu was still at the side. "Li Weiming." Jingyu turned to look at Li Weiming. Li Weiming nodded and turned to Qinggu. He untied the ropes on Qingji's body and removed the cloth that was gagging his mouth. "Quick, let me see." Qinggu ran over to Jingyu as soon as he was released from his restraints. When he saw what Jingyu handed over, his eyes were filled with astonishment. "It's actually human skin, an illusion made from human skin. No wonder I didn't notice it at all." Qinggu held the thing and studied it for a long time before he slowly opened his mouth. After thinking for a while, he went down to study the rotting corpse. "It's the poison sect's doing." Qinggu stood in front of Jingyu and looked at Jingyu. The poison sect glued this thing on with a potion. Only the poison sect would be able to do something like this. Poison sect. Jingyu slowly furrowed her brows. "I knew it, Xiaoqin definitely isn't dead. If this isn't Xiaoqin's corpse, why would the poison sect make this person look like Xiaoqin? And where is Xiaoqin now? Could it be that he's fallen into the poison sect's hands?" Jingyu's expression turned frosty as she thought of this. She clenched her fists tightly. If Xiaoqin wasn't dead and had fallen into Nailan Yu's hands, what would he be like? That's all unknown. Qinggu slowly shook his head. Perhaps Ninth Brother wasn't taken away by the poison sect? Or perhaps Ninth Brother really is dead? The arrow that hit ninth brother. As soon as Qinggu finished speaking, Jingyu shuddered violently. No, that can't be. Xiaochen definitely isn't dead. Jingyu clenched her fists tightly as she furrowed her brows. Xiaochen isn't dead. He definitely isn't. Jingyu glared viciously at Qinggu as she repeated herself. But Qinggu was about to say something when he saw Jingyu's vicious glare and silently shut his mouth. Being tied up the entire way had been incomparably painful. He didn't want to go through it a second time. Qinggu silently lowered his head. The fact that the person in the coffin wasn't Xiaochen was a great encouragement to Jingyu. Chapter 11:22. After all this time, Jingyu had silently endured everything. It was as if she'd found something to rely on. The excitement, joy, and the feeling of coming back to life were so clear to her. There was only one thought in her mind. Her Xiaochen wasn't dead. Jingyu, Shangguan Linglan, and the others returned quickly. What they had to do next was very important, and they had to let Shangguan Hongwen, Yuan Mingyuan, and the others know about it. So as soon as they returned, Jingyu gathered everyone together. When Jingyu announced the news, it caused quite a stir. At first, there was shock and disbelief, but then there was an unquenchable joy. The ninth emperor's wasn't dead. Ninth imperial concubine. If that's the case, then this was all a trap set up by the enemy. What does the ninth imperial concubine plan to do? Shangguan Hongwen asked after a brief moment of joy. That's why I called you all here today. Jingyu looked around at the crowd and said, I don't know why this was set up, or if the mastermind is the poison sect, but I have to make a decision right now. We have been silent in the forest for so long, cultivating and recuperating, building the 10,000 beast army. Do you still remember our purpose? Jingyu's voice rang out slowly, drawing everyone's attention to her in an instant. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at Jingyu. How could we forget? Shangguan Hongwen took a deep breath and said, 100,000 soldiers were defeated at Tongmen Slope. Our brothers, our hatred. Everyone fell silent at Shangguan Hongwen's words. This was the reason why they'd been working so hard to become stronger. They wanted to turn the tables and avenge their brothers. Now, Jingyu had brought it up of her own accord. After such a long period of silence and hard work, are you all ready for revenge? Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile as she looked around and asked slowly, what does the ninth imperial concubine mean? Shangguan Hongwen's eyes narrowed as he looked at Jingyu. Nan Li and the Tokyo have forced us to this point. It's time for us to strike back. Jingyu's eyes were fierce as she clenched her fists. It doesn't matter if Xiaochen is in the poison sect or not. We must fight this battle. Jingyu's words, everyone's eyes blazed with fervor as they looked at Jingyu. Then what plan do you plan to adopt this time? Yuan Mingyuan asked as he looked up at Jingyu. Declare war. Attack directly. Jingyu spat out each word. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at Jingyu in shock. They never imagined that Jingyu's plan would be a frontal assault. The news that they were going to fight back and take revenge spread to all the soldiers. Their blood was ignited. Everyone rubbed their palms together. The hearts of the cavalrymen were filled with excitement. They were looking forward to what would happen on the battlefield this time. Inside the house, Jingyu was sitting by the table, staring at the map in front of her as if she was studying the route. When Fang Zicheng stepped into the house, he saw Jingyu's serious expression. Her eyebrows remained the same, but Fang Zicheng's eyes curved slightly. Chapter 11:23. Don't stand at the door smiling like an idiot, you old fox. Jingyu didn't even raise her head as she calmly spat out these words. Fang Zicheng's smile instantly froze. I say, can you not call me a fox? Fang Zicheng walked towards Jingyu helplessly and said, I'm so handsome, how do I look like a fox? You look like a fox everywhere. Jingyu's mouth twitched as she expressionlessly replied. She raised her eyebrows and looked at Fang Zicheng with a smile. Why are you looking for me? Do you have any ideas for me? HM? Fang Zicheng didn't answer Jingyu's question. Instead, his eyes looked up and down Jingyu's body, making Jing Yu's hair stand on end. What are you looking at? Am I not wearing my clothes properly? Jing Yu looked down at her clothes and glared at Fong Zicheng as she asked. Nothing. Fong Zicheng raised his eyebrows and said with amusement, I finally feel like the Jing Yu from before is back. What nonsense are you talking about? Jing Yu was stunned for a moment before she lowered her head and scolded him with a smile. Jing Yu, Xiao Chen won't die. Don't worry. Fong Zicheng looked at Jing Yu with incomparable seriousness as he spoke. Jing Yu's body trembled when she heard this. She looked at Fong Zicheng with a questioning gaze and asked, What do you know? What do you mean by that? Ah. Fong Zicheng smiled and stood up. He raised his hand and placed it on the map on the table in front of Jing Yu as he said, Pass through here and head straight for the enemy's rear. Jing Yu lowered her head and looked at where Fong Zicheng's finger was pointing. Lastly, Fong Zicheng slowly withdrew his hand and stared at Jing Yu as he said solemnly, Don't get too close to Qin Bai. Perhaps it was too late. Fong Zicheng didn't finish his sentence. His expression was serious as he turned around and walked out of the room. This series of changes stunned Jing Yu. Seeing that Fong Zicheng was about to walk out of the room, she hurriedly called out. Perhaps what? What do you mean? Fong Zicheng's back as he walked away and waved his arm in reply to Jing Yu. Jing Yu stood in her original spot and cursed. Jing Yu muttered as she sat her day. She didn't expect that just as she sat down. Hey! Quick! Where's Miracle Dr. Qing Gu? The commotion outside startled Jing Yu who was in the house. What's going on? It was a mess outside. Jing Yu walked out of the room and saw 3 people lying on stretchers covered in blood. Her eyes narrowed as she said, Did the Tokyo and Nanli invade? One of the generals walked in front of Jing Yu and said, The 9th Imperial Concubine, these brothers were attacked by a giant eagle. What? Jing Yu was startled when she heard this. She frowned and asked the general, Eagle? Eagle? The general didn't seem to know how to explain. He pursed his lips and said, Today, I was leading the soldiers to train as usual. However, when we passed by a waterfall in a valley, we were suddenly attacked. That was a bird that looked like an eagle, but it was very, very big. I only took one look and it was so big in the sky that it was at least a dozen feet long. The general seemed to have some lingering fear as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.